on tsunami day, I think it was a holiday. So we were all traveling. I was traveling from, after a small family vacation, we are coming back to Trivandrum, where I was based. And then by morning 10 o'clock, I get the call from Chennai. Another colleague of SIFS who is from Chennai, and he had gone for the Christmas vacation back home. So he called to say that there's been waves, and he was the first, and he sort of said the word tsunami, because he's a fisheries graduate and from the fishing community. So even though it was a rarity, he was aware of that term. So he was one of the first to say that. So it was a little unreal for us. We knew something is happening. I got call from Koilon, where other colleagues were there, that Koilon had also waves. And it was, so the seriousness took a lot of time to sink. And in fact, my family and I, we were because we were returning from Kottayam, and on the way we were sort of getting down to explore small things. So it was still not sunk in. It's only by a little late afternoon or early evening when we reached home, and then the media, then you know that it is something very serious. And of course, the very next day, we had our office, and we had a meeting of all the staff. In fact, the meeting, which should have been in the morning itself, we had to have only the afternoon, because my colleague Ephraim, his uncle died in the tsunami. So they had a funeral, and he was my key person in Tamil Nadu. He's from Kanyakumari, and Kanyakumari was very badly affected, and many other parts of Tamil Nadu. So he was in charge of our Tamil Nadu programs. So I didn't want to even have a discussion without him. So waited for him to come, and then after lunch we had a internal meeting. And we recognized that this is serious, because we had no previous disaster experience, mainly because we were West Coast based organization, and we had just made a small entry in Nagapattinam, which was historically cyclone prone. So we had never really been in a disaster situation. But one reads about the disasters. I have been sort of following from a distance the disasters from Latur onwards, because there was my home architect who built my house, engineer, and there were a couple. So they had gone and did voluntary work in Latur. So that time they used to share the Latur experiences. Then of course the Kutch experience was reasonably well documented, and there was a good media coverage, even though it was not that much the TV era, but still we got to know through the print media quite a bit. So one had the thing, but we never had a direct experience. I also did not have direct experience. But we recognize that this is a different disaster, because it has affected fishermen almost exclusively. The main victims were the fishermen. And as a fishermen's federation, and we had membership in two of the worst affected districts, Nagapattinam, where we had just started work, and we had 3 village organizations, and we had about 40-45 fishermen societies in Kanyakumari, which was the next worst affected. So we knew that this is something that affected our member and the larger constituency for which we are working. So we realized that this is our disaster. There is no way we are going to be an outsider in this, providing some support. This is our disaster. So without much experience, we just started off. So from SIFS, we immediately formed 2 teams. One to go to Kanyakumari, and another to go to Nagapattinam. That's how the planning started. And Kanyakumari was literally next door, and the team immediately mopped up very quickly. Of course, my team is all business people. In the sense, we build boats, we supply motors, so buying, selling things, dealing with the markets. These are all they are all quite experiences that very quickly they mopped up whatever is available in Trivandrum in terms of bread and some supplies, and said you can't go open without anything in your hand to see victims. So one team went off. The Nagapattinam team, I think, then left the next day. They had to plan and prepare, and then they left the next day. That is why, yeah. No, same night. They also left the same night. On 20, no, this is 27th. Because 26th this happened, 26th evening only we start seeing the news, and then next day morning. So it's 21st, 27th afternoon was our meeting, and 27th evening the two teams left. One to Nagapattinam and another to Kanyakumari. And in fact, after sending them off, and I realized that there is a huge task in terms of raising resources, planning, communication, putting in place some of these things, organizing the funds, various, even if it is just small things, you still need something. So I stayed put and then did a little bit of that sort of preparatory work. But by 7 o'clock, I just couldn't feel, I was feeling uneasy. So I also went to Kanyakumari. Sushma and Annie came subsequently the next day. Annie and another friend of ours, Amarnath Raja, who was her ex-boss, the two of them decided that they are volunteering and going to Nagapattinam. So they came to CIFS, and that is when Sushma and another friend of hers joined. They landed, and then so in fact Sushma I had only vaguely known at that time. We were aware of each other in some ways, especially the KMVS was part of a network that I was also involved. So Sushma herself was not a KMVS representative at that time. So, but in some UNDP meeting we had met. She was there a little further away across the table, so might have said hello or something like that. Beyond that, we had not met. In fact, she might have said that her first contact was with the Dan Foundation. It's just that she couldn't get through to Vasimalai, who was the head of Dan Foundation. But KMVS people had told her then, because it's better to go to CIFS because they are with the fishing community. It's a fishing community organization. Then she contacted me, and fortunately I was there in Trivandrum, and I could talk to her, and then she straight away came over with the Nandini. Has come because SDC was a big donor for the whole Kutch work, Kutch Abhiyan, KMVS and all that. So she had therefore she was a resource person for them even later on. So she was connected with their work in some way or the other, but she had a SDC background at that time. So she came over, and the first, in fact, because we had already started working in Kanyakumari, I had gone that day itself, 26th, so 27th we had already convened, asked my local friends, colleagues, because we have a local district federation. CIFS has got this 3-tier structure, so we village organizations selling fish and providing credit, then we have the district federations. So the district federation in Kanyakumari, we had visited and then told them they had already started relief work on their own, and we gave them support. We said, and interestingly we realized that the Kanyakumari situation, there are plenty of local NGOs. So at that time it was very clear that the disaster situation, even though we had not been a disaster situation, some of the simple elements of what you call disaster values in disaster management, somewhere through my readings I think I might have absorbed unknowingly. The fact that we should not compete in disaster was something I had read about from the Latur and Gujarat. I think some EPW articles were there, so I remember vaguely. So anyway, so I also know that we also know that the church is the biggest player in Kanyakumari. So the Kotar diocese, that's a church diocese, name of the diocese in Kanyakumari, their social service society is also one of the sort of founding organizations which sponsored the local societies, cooperatives and the district federation of Kanyakumari. So they had played a role in the evolution of CIFS. So we went and met them, tried to find out what they are planning to do. They had also no immediate plan. And since there were so many organizations, there was no information. Actually, the first coordination of sorts started in Kanyakumari, where we immediately asked the cases to take the lead and convene a meeting. So, very next day all the organizations met and they divided up the villages in terms of who will provide service to whom, and then take responsibility for providing whatever relief they can. So, the first coordination started in Kanyakumari without any formal setup, but accepting the leadership of the Kota Social Service Society, because they are because it's completely 99% Catholic coast. The fishermen all are Catholic. So, it is a church organization which has a big influence. So, we accepted the leadership and divided, and that started working. So, that coordination lasted for about a couple of weeks. Then it just collapsed on its own, because it was not formalized, it was not this thing, and KSS, or rather the church itself, were sort of on a trip of their own. They sensed by then that they are going to get the bulk of the funds and they didn't think that they need all of us. So the whole attitude changed after the first couple of weeks. First 2 weeks we actually started, in a sense, the kind of a loose coordination which worked fairly well in Kanyakumari. And in fact, we were the first to provide the list of the even the camps. I am talking about Kanyakumari because it's not NCRC, but still there is a history. These are all linked. The Kanyakumari coordination and the Kanyakumari relief was very different, because it is the only situation in the entire tsunami affected coast where the lead role in relief was provided by local neighboring communities, not governments, not NGOs. So that was a very unique situation, and they had the whole say. These are Catholic fishermen, but all churches within 10-15 kilometers of the coast, both Catholic and Protestant, opened the doors, because the church infrastructure is the best in terms of a large hall where you can cook there, you can provide relief, so hundreds of people can be just accommodated there. Schools, of course, are possible, then government infrastructure, but this was the village communities opened up, and it was the church structures that built. So people went there. The very second or third day, I remember going to one of the camps in a church and asking the father and the local committee people, what do you want? What can we do for you? They first said, no, we are fine, we are doing well, we don't need your support. Then we said, there must be something that we can do. There are many things like, then we had our own idea based on feedback, petticoats, stuff like that. Yeah, those things we need. But feeding them, they took care. And then, of course, this list was provided to the collector quite early. We had also contributed to making that list. In fact, the first list we gave might have been our list to the collector. We put together, because our federation, every village we have society, so we get the information. So very quickly we put together the list, and our federation gave the list. So the district administration would then, whatever material it had in terms of food stuff, it will go and routinely drop those things in the morning. All the other stuff the locals would be procuring from their own contributions and from their own households. So at least the first week was just amazing there. Anyway, that's the Kanyakumari. So started the Kanyakumari work, and the 28th, 29th, I am getting a call from Nagapattinam, because Sushma and all have reached there. My team was also there already. The SIFS team was very much active. The SIFS team typically went and started working in the big village where we had our first society, Tarangambadi. It's a big village, about 1,000 households, so that was our base. We had a boat building center there, we had an outboard motor training and service center there. So they went there, started removing bodies, providing some relief materials. Locally, they started working. And Karaikal was our base there. Karaikal is part of Pondicherry state, it's a union territory, but it's very close to Tarangambadi. Karaikal divides the Nagapattinam coast into two, literally. So it is just north of Karaikal, and we were based there. So they were only looking forward to working in that village and whatever comes as a natural growth from there. But Sushma and Annie and all landed up there, and Sushma and Nandini particularly, because they had the Gujarat experience. Straight away Sushma talked about the need to coordinate and said, she came, see, that was the nice thing about some of these people who came from outside. I'll talk about Stan a little later. Sushma, Stan, these kind of people who had their very strong experience in previous disasters, who are running big institutions, who had networks, who are playing very important role, were very happy to come under the banner of CIFS, which was of course a local organization, and therefore and also we saw ourselves at that time, I used to say, a little bit of hype perhaps, but basically that we are the largest representative body of the victims on the coast. Actual victims are our members. So with that kind of positioning that CIFS had, it had a huge amount of therefore legitimacy and credibility, and these outsiders who came were extremely conscious of that and were very keen to subsume their identity under the CIFS identity. So they said, Sushma could have just gone straight to the district collectorate and said, she's from Gujarat, she worked on this experience, and she's from Kutch Navnirman Abhiyan or KMVS, and then straight away started, doing things. But somehow they felt strongly that it's this kind of organization should get the limelight. So she convinced the CIFS team that we should go to the collectorate and try to see what we can do in terms of getting a coordination mechanism going. So that was already our agenda. So she came with that agenda. So I get call from my colleagues in CIFS based in Nagapattinam. Sushma also called saying this, no, actually the first call doesn't come then. So they decide to have a meeting. So they go and see the collectorate, and then I think they sort of agree that there can be a meeting. So basically I think they propose a meeting of the NGOs. So the Annie and Annie were all there. So they all, about 7 people were there I think. So 7 NGOs and from CIFS 7-8 people. So small meeting. So everybody introducing, all these people said CIFS. So CIFS was a big group. So when the idea of a coordination came, CIFS was given everybody was blank, nobody had a clue. So since Sushma and all were there, CIFS was asked to then take the responsibility to start a coordination. So the idea was something that the team of people who had, because that is also when you must have heard about this big team of 15 IAS officers who landed up. They also just landed up on the day before or something like that, or the same day. And Mrs. Shanta Sheila Nair, who was the additional chief secretary, cadre person, very senior, was leading the team. And so this meeting she convened and she presided. And then she said, okay, CIFS, so then you people do it. And then so I got a call saying that, Sushma is saying we should do this. We have been asked to coordinate what. I said, fine, let's do that. So based on that, the team went ahead, and by then I was in a little bit more comfort zone in terms of getting all the contacts, donors, started finding that there are a lot of people contacting, and we had a very comfortable position because we were being funded. We had a big project from the Dutch NGO HIVOS. So we had a large project with them. Obviously, there were many many components of the project for which funds had come. But very early on, over phone, they gave us the permission to say, just go ahead and start doing your work. We will settle accounts later. So that was one thing. And we were a business organization. So we had boat building and outboard motors, so working capital in the bank. So overdraft facilities. So literally we started. We were one of the first of the blocks with at that point a kitty of 50 lakhs. So at least that much I could safely say we had money. So without that you can't go and do anything. You can just go wait for people to come. In fact, a lot of people couldn't get going because donors went, proposals, and it takes its own time. There are of course specialized donors who work in emergency, but their style is very different. The donor, their emergency work wears a very different face from their regular development work. So suddenly they send their own team, they come with their own money and they started working. So direct action. But for the local NGOs it's not easy. So just because we had this kind of working capital and funds available in CIFS, we jumped in without any hesitation and said just go ahead, just keep doing whatever is absolutely necessary. So we were able to quickly establish, in fact some of the things that Shushma and others who came in said, first grab rooms. There will be hordes of people landing up there, then you will get completely, you won't even have place to stay. So we were one of the first, first mover advantage. We blocked most of the rooms in this French residency in Karaikal, which is now in very bad shape, but those days it was far better. So we grabbed rooms, we put, so there was a lot of this kind of, like the army marching on its belly. We really had the institutional capacity to handle arrangements, logistics across the coast. Even though we are Trivandrum based, we had membership in many parts of Kerala, North Kerala, South Kerala, and Tamil Nadu. Our presence was there, we had strong presence up to Nagapattinam. Kanyakumari, we also had a federation in Tirunelveli, Tuticorin. And we had good contacts even in this Park Bay, Rameshwaram. So the contacts were all, so I am just telling you that these things made a lot of difference. It is not just a question of, somebody saying that, or some government agency or UNDP saying, okay, let us ask these guys to coordinate. They are goody guys or they are the right guys, whatever. There was a strong infrastructure. It's historically a strong sense of contact. So it was very quick, we were very quick off the blocks. So that was the most important thing in this. So, so then after initiating some of these things, I must also mention something about Stan. In fact, Stan was the first person to contact me on 26th night itself. The day of the tsunami, when I returned home from the travels, he called me. And he straight away said, whatever help you want, please let me know. So the first money in our bank came from a small donation that CIFS got, Stan got one of the organizations connected with him, some 2 lakhs in our bank. So he knows the importance of that, and that went straight away for purchasing bed sheets and things from Coimbatore. So, and Stan was my coach for the first week. So it's literally, on the phone, and we were talking twice or thrice a day, and he used to tell me what are things. Because he comes from the Andhra cyclone of 77 or 79. That was his start. So, he has been in many disasters after that, including a bit in Kutch. And he's worked in many of these even Naxal areas and all that. So he has a lot of experience. So he gave a lot of support right in the beginning. So unlike Shushma, Stan and I were already quite good friends. So it's not that we had met very frequently, but we knew each other pretty well and could pick up a phone and talk. And so Stan was the first coach, and then we started working. I got the contacts, I started working. And then Nagapattinam, once the NGO Coordination Center concept was agreed, then the next day the district collector was asked to provide some space where we could put up some temporary facility. So I decided that Kanyakumari is something manageable because we have a good local organization, our staff are local, so it's a local area for us. But Nagapattinam, our actual base was very limited. In the 40-50 villages, only in 3 of them we actually had work, we had membership. But as an organization, we had greater capacity than most of the local NGOs. So we went to, so I decided that it is important to go there. So 31st evening, reached Chennai, and from there, in fact midnight, so literally early hours of 1st Jan, I was in Nagapattinam, French residency. So Annie and all were just about to leave, get back after their thing. It was just a voluntary thing. They had the work here in Trivandrum. Annie and Raja were planning to get back. I just landed there and I was feeling bad that, they're leaving. So we persuaded them to stay on for another day actually. And then we went to the collectorate. Then in no time our Shamiana came up. Already volunteers had started coming in to work with SIFs. So it was, and through Shushma and Stan, they were the main sources for volunteers for us the first month. They brought in the people, their contacts, their friends. People started coming. So it was quite exciting that a lot of people turned up. And the coordination center got going. Basically, it's a 3-tier organization. You have the village cooperatives. The mandate of the village cooperative is to take the fishermen away from the clutches of the middlemen, money lender and merchant, the 3 M's we say. So it is to make them independent and have control over their sale and get a good price for their fish. This in turn requires that you need to provide regular credit. It's the lack of credit that pushes them into the hands of these people, clutches of these people. So SIFs provide, the local village cooperative provides all these services. So it is basically to provide a kind of economic empowerment for the fishermen and to get better income for them. And it is self-managed. The district organization supervises that work, organizes the fishermen initially, then does hand-holding, then does a supervisory role. It also then provides all the linkages for institutional credit, banks, markets, the marketing system which the local organization does, connecting them with companies or providing them market information and supervising all that work. So, and training, capacity building. So that is the second level. Some of them also have, according to local need and capacity, other businesses, supplying of nets, supplying of fuel for boats, various kinds of things they do up to a point. SIFs as the overall apex is a bit of a specialized agency working that time quite a lot on technology. We introduced new boats to replace the traditional boats. We were part of the whole introduction of the small motors for small fishermen with which they could go deeper. So boats and motors were our strength. So we were manufacturing boats, supplying boats. We had boat building centers across the coast. We also had outboard motor service centers across the coast. We were a distributor of one of the leading outboard motor brands. So that was also a very important strength for us. So we were at that time also having a large credit program. We had directly taken loans from the SIDBI, Small Industry Development Bank of India, and then other commercial banks, and we were lending through the federation and the cooperative to our fishermen members. So it is a large ecosystem of economic services. There was also insurance and savings, financial services. We are quite strong. So supply of inputs and financial services was the strength of SIFs, along with what was very important and very not very common in a kind of a cooperative federation is that we were also an organization with a lot of research and documentation. So we were already having a fair amount of documentation on the fisheries sector in terms of, we did our own census of fishing fleets parallel to government and provided data. So we had a certain strong presence in the sector. So we were well known in the fisheries sector, not that much outside. So the research institutes, government agencies were all fully aware at that level, especially Kerala, to a lesser extent in Tamil Nadu. Because Kanyakumari, though, is in Tamil Nadu, it is more historically associated with Kerala, it's the west coast. So the Chennai is 700 kilometers away. So they seem to think, look at these guys as Kerala people. Even their Tamil is mixed with Malayalam. So to that extent, the Tamil Nadu contacts at the higher level, most people wouldn't have known us that much in Tamil Nadu. at the time of tsunami. But anyway, in the fishery sector, among fishing communities, we had quite a good set of contacts and base. So that is CIFS. So our mandate was on that, but given that it is entirely a independent body, it didn't have any government control over it. I use the term cooperative loosely because we never had a cooperative registration. We just registered under the Charitable Societies Act of the local area, wherever. So Tamil Nadu Society is under the Tamil Nadu Act, Kerala Societies, including CIFS, registered in the Kerala Societies Act, Travancore Cochin Societies Act. So, I use the term cooperative more in as the spirit of the term rather than a legal term, in a legal sense. So, as a cooperative body, we set our own rules. Our general body made up of members set our own rules. There were sponsoring organizations we promoted, did the initial work. But all that work was done in the 70s and 80s. So by 90s, many of them had withdrawn. Many of them were all just, in handshaking distance. They had no real involvement in the running of the organization. So at the time of tsunami, we were a large fishermen cooperative organization, multi-tied cooperative organization, run entirely through a system of representation from the fishing community, with professionals like me running the day-to-day operation. So to that extent, it was anything, the mandates come from within. So we are not accountable to some registrar who says you cannot do this or do this. So that is the important part of the thing. Mandate was our own. The first day that I went to Kanyakumari, these things now fade in memory. So things get compressed. You don't see the day-by-day action now. 2-3 days all gets compressed in memory. So a very early thing, we had a meet. So we convened a meeting, board of the CIFS in Nagarkoil. Respecting that, I think our chairman was coming from Nagarkoil at that time, Kanyakumari. CIFS chairman for Kanyakumari. He was also one of the tsunami affected families. All our board members, and so we had a meeting there, and it is like an emergency decision. They said all of us are in trouble. Trivandrum, to some extent, our fishermen were not much affected. Koilon members were affected, Kanyakumari affected. At that time, we had 3 full members in CIFS. So it's also important to understand the structure. Each district gets a board position, but the district federation has to graduate to a certain level before it gets a full membership. Otherwise, it's just an associate member who can come for the general body. But board position they don't get. So we had only 3 full members who had board position, and 2 of them were in the tsunami affected area. So they said, we can't see ourselves as a board doing much immediately. We are all individually in Drupal, our local federation, we have a lot of work here. So it is almost like the resolution was passed saying that for the time being, all powers of the board are with the chief executive, which is me at that time. So it's saying that take day-to-day big decisions, don't wait for us, but you can inform us subsequently. So these are also internal innovations and mechanisms that helped us move fast. That board resolutions, board things were largely, sort of became, it was like an emergency situation. So given powers. So we started that way, and so the mandate was to work with and this is one of the discussions that took place straight away in the very first meeting. It is a discussion that would continue to take place. Start very initially with a very nice way, everybody agreeing to it, eventually become very contentious also, saying that let us no more look at our work as purely member. Because one of the challenges of a member-based organization in a disaster situation, your members are a subset of the larger population, and members think that they should be given the priority. In normal times, we will only provide a service to a member. Non-members should join us if they want to provide it. But in the tsunami, we said that all are victims. And we know that the government is going to do everything for everybody. There are many NGOs are going to do. If we start then only focusing on our members, we are going to lose an opportunity in being able to set the larger agenda for this tsunami, this thing. We have to play a role in ensuring that all people get the right benefits, that everything reaches everybody. And so at that point in time, I think the mindset of our board members was also very open. They said, yes, okay, let's do it. And I said, in Nagapattinam, all these things we are going ahead with, we are going to. So there were two things that took place. One was the immediate emergency powers to move fast, and secondly, to be open and work for all the victims as a general principle. This was also accepted. So this is what made us confident in getting into, say, even agriculture work in Nagapattinam. So like that, so setting up of coordination, many of these things automatically came on board. The recognition that CIFS, even if its membership is patchy, strong in some place, weak in other place, should function as a kind of a larger representative body. Then when I go to Nagapattinam, I already straight away contact Sneha, because I know that CIFS in some ways is a newcomer there. We are practically an outsider with a fig leaf of saying we have work in 3 villages. In recent times we are there, so nobody can deny us that presence, that we are not completely parachuted from somewhere. We were there, but our presence was very limited. And the entire Nagapattinam, the NGO with whom historically CIFS had a long connection, was Sneha. So I felt that tactically, strategically, it is important that they should join us. So even though the mandate was for CIFS to start the coordination, I felt that we may run into serious problems of legitimacy and credibility, and also our contacts on the coast are way behind that of Sneha. They have a very strong field presence. Only thing is, the Sneha leadership was an activist leadership. So we were more of the, let us say, doers, getting things done, doing business, supplying things, service delivery. They were more into rights-based work. So sometimes these things are very difficult to put together. So it is largely because of the personal equation some of us had with the Sneha that we were able to put it together. Otherwise, as institutions, the link was very nominal. We were working in the same area, the community, same community. Their strength was women's groups. They were working with women, because they had self-help groups across the coast. We had 3 village cooperatives. We were much stronger in terms of fisheries livelihoods, this thing. They were much stronger in terms of social and this thing. So in many ways, they would bring to this joint venture significant strengths which we lacked. So I talked to Shushma, and she also was immediately very happy, because more people join and get stakes in the system, the better it is. So exclusivity is what kind of creates problems. So we went and met Jesratnam, who was she is a widow of few months standing at that time. In fact, the entire self-help group work and that activities were all under the thing of Christie. So Jesu was forced to take over the whole system, and she was struggling with that. She was also, and she immediately agreed to join. She may not have easily joined hand with any NGO. She's choosy. So it is just that we had the prior contact and the goodwill. We had also worked together on the Sri Lanka issue. CIFS, we were taking a lead role on the fishermen getting arrested and all that in Sri Lanka. So we had formed a network in which they were also part. So there were some levels of collaboration that they were fully aware. They had their own reservations about CIFS as because we don't, in a cooperative organization like CIFS does not have technically an ideology. Its ideology is more that of the typical cooperative ideology, which is cooperative principles, that sort of thing. That is not ideology for these people. Then they have their own notions on what is ideology. So we have they had their own reservations. These are guys who don't understand all this. They are apolitical, and so they often do these stupid things. So this is how they had in their mind. But still, they accepted that we were basically a stronger organization with the heart in the right place. So, okay, despite differences, let us work together. I mean, we didn't talk all this, but you can think, these things come instinctively. Later on, this would affect on and off. So, it is not that the working was completely smooth or throughout we were on the same page. But we recognize that being together is very important in this. I think that is where, even when there were strong differences on some important principles, especially we had strong differences once the housing program started. Their rights-based approach and our do-it-yourself kind of approach with the fishermen, which requires a little bit more toughness with fishermen, which required a lot more putting a lot more responsibility on the fishermen. Their thing was more to represent fishermen and protect them from all these evil forces outside, including all these very dubious government organizations with their unknown intentions. So that was their attitude. So it was often not gelling. So actually NCRC policy and the SNEHA policies were clashing on some of the sector policies. So, okay, we said, okay, whatever it is, that's also part of the democratic thing. If as an NGO, if SNEHA believes in something strong and wants to do it, so be it. But as NCRC, even though they are part of it and their voice is also heard here, we would take sometimes a decision which was not entirely in tune with that. So that is another part. So I am just telling you, many of these partnerships and all were based finally on goodwill and an agreement that despite differences, our being together is important. SNEHA could have also said, we are not agreeing. We are going to leave NCRC. So when they were not happy, they kept silent and then kept doing their stuff. So I think the local knowledge that we brought between the two of us was probably the main source of the success of that whole work. And there it is important to understand that the local knowledge is sometimes also sectoral knowledge. Fisheries, boats, nets, what happens, economics, that is where SIFS was very strong. Even if our Nagapattinam presence was limited, it was the principles were the same, and that was very important. Say that, for instance, don't give more boats. Now, SNEHA with more of a socio-economic perspective, more a community aspect oriented, would not be strong on that. They would only see that everybody should get something. So these are areas where we brought in those perspectives. So I think it was a very good match in that sense. Though there were areas of clash and annoyance with each other. In the early phase, there were SIFS and SNEHA, we started the work, but there were other local NGOs in Nagapattinam, maybe half a dozen at best, which have some standing. We even invited them to be part of the coordination, one of the early meetings, first week meetings, because every day, now this is something that Shushma brought from Kutch, the need for daily meetings. This was something nobody else would have thought of. Every day that in the evenings, there is a coordination meeting. And all the people land up, and from the government side, it was an officially convened first week or 2 weeks, it was an officially convened meeting also. So it was presided over by one of the IAS officers who was available at the time and willing to sit through the meeting. So I think even if Shanta Sheila Nair, this thing, Vivek Harinarayan joined that team. He's a relatively, I think after Madam he was a senior IAS officer. So he led some of the meetings at that time. So daily the number of people in the meeting would start increasing. So all NGOs got the news that there is a daily meeting of the NGO coordination. Not the NGO coordination center, but the NGOs are invited and government is thing. So government providing that leadership was crucial and legitimacy for that meeting. People would come. And since the NGO coordination center came from a very initial mandate in the first meeting convened by the government, the NGO coordination center of course took up the responsibility for all these communications with the NGOs. And Nagapattinam, unlike Kadalur and Kanyakumari, where the collectors after a first initial shock started feeling, see, after all you are talking of 20, 30 organizations. That was, they felt it is within their bandwidth to take on. So the NGO coordination center and the collectors direct coordination were getting into, became parallel issues in many of these places. So it became a little bit of, some, you take care of these things, we'll take some division of labor. It is more like giving some jobs, things like that. Here, the IAS officers were very clear, and then subsequently Mr. Radhakrishnan was very clear. There is no way that he is going to deal with 400 people. It's kind of madness, and he doesn't have the team to do that. So he said, you guys take over. So so our legitimacy and this thing comes from the fact that the local district administration gave us the solid support initially, and we were in a position to respond. And we impressed people with the immediate, because for instance, Raja, who came with Annie, he came back and he set up that time, mind you, this is Jan 2005, he was the first customer for the Reliance card, internet card. With your, so she might have told you about PCMCA card. He was the first customer. I go back and I presume I am the second or third customer. So we got hold of that, and with that single laptop and this thing, he set up internet communication for a dozen computers in that center in the district collectorate where we first working. So and the first big product that information product that was a hot sale, of course not priced, was a map of the coast. 40, 50 villages, list of villages. So these things all, they knew that all are outsiders practically. They could come to the collectorate. The location of the coordination was excellent. We were in the collectorate where everything was happening. They could come there. We had a team of volunteers. You could go and ask them, and they would immediately provide you the information, the contacts, and would immediately help. So large groups of volunteers would land up, and then we will say, so a group of people came from Maharashtra, somebody might have told you, a big team of volunteers, young boys. So you know what to do with them, language, nothing. But there was this whole go down for the relief materials. So we were also helping the government in managing that go down at that time. In fact, I myself was not aware of it for quite some time. This was all happening. We had a big team. We were responding. So these boys were put as volunteers to load and unload and take care of the go down. So in fact, there are also, even in those days, despite the larger government system being so brilliant, in fact, that I'll tell a little while later, but very good. There was a Tahsildar or somebody who was pilfering material. So he was suspended immediately. So like that, there's all kinds of things happening. So we had people there in all these places working. So volunteers could come and we could place them. So at that point in time, because unlike Kanyakumari, where the relief was largely a local effort, this is entirely an external effort. And external effort requires very clearly immediate information, things like that. It requires coordination, but nobody likes to be coordinated. But here, they felt the need to be part of the larger system because it provides a service that they would struggle otherwise. So the first 2 weeks of relief work, I think the role was very crucial. That is when we established the credentials and the name. And there the relief system, I think Annie was not there during that period, but she knows about it. Sushma was certainly there. You heard how we set up between Sneha and SIPS, how we set up the voluntary system. Sneha had field staff everywhere. So they were anchoring the local requirement. So they became the people to tell what is the need. So we had our own supply system, whatever we save, Sneha, other sources, whatever we get. And on a daily basis, we would have vehicles going to all the villages to provide some of the material and to collect needs. And it comes back and it is fed back immediately because the government system. So it is, so the coordination, NGO coordination center, NCRC At that time it was only NGO Coordination Center. NCRC gets formed only, formally gets formed a month later. But the NGO Coordination Center should not be taken as the coordination. The coordination is what is happening there, in which NGO Coordination Center is one player. So the government also was playing its role and in coordination with us. So every day after our NGO meeting, their teams, 15 teams that went to the field or whatever, no, they had 7 teams, which went to the team from one IAS officer. In fact, the first few days even a minister headed a team, then IAS, and then you had the local revenue staff, then the electricity board. So it was, Radhakrishnan must have told you about all that. So they would all come back for a late night debriefing, and it will go, their meetings would go up to midnight. So we would, by then we would have fed in the information we have received, saying this is the requirements from the different areas. They would also have their own source of information. But wherever the government would plug in, they would plug in. Other things, we will use the NGO coordination, we will get calls, we will say, okay, these villages want this. So the NGOs concerned would go and supply there. So this mechanism in the field was very excellent in the first 2 weeks. So, and we had one of the early days, one agency, I think Bhumika Trust, you must have heard mentioned. They were also one of the very, yes, they gave 100 mobile phones. First 3 months, these 100 mobile phones were given to all our volunteers, and they paid the whatever was the bill. So that was a brilliant thing. So that was start of the cell phone era practically, you know. So when rates were coming down and people started having it for the first time. So that way we were able to, the communication was, therefore we developed a network of people across the coast, and with cell phones, and with central facility in the this thing, working starting from morning 7:30 and going on till night, even midnight. So we will go to the NGO coordination meeting, come back and sit in our own team, all the volunteers in our team, 10, 15, 20 people. We will then have long drawn discussions, the various issues, the problems, everything, what to do, how to do, perspectives, good, very good discussion. So that was the exciting part. In fact, we had from Coimbatore, Viji, Jayalakshmi, first week. I mean, these are all memorable characters. She'd worked in Kutch relief, and her sister was with Shushma working in one of the organizations there. She was a brilliant logistics manager. First week, she is the one who took care of all the logistics. We never knew when food comes, everything, all that was taken care of. So we were well fed, we were well taken care of. So different people took on excellent roles in that set of volunteers who came, to the extent that I took all that for granted. After the first 2 weeks, first week there was a rotation, some people had to go back, some others came. So even though that did create some hiccups, we were still okay. But after 2 weeks and 3 weeks, slowly we were brought down to ground level. All these people who had come at the peak of the requirement for relief work, one by one left. Then we had to get people for the long haul. And that is when it becomes more difficult. It's very difficult to find people, very difficult to put that kind of a team. So big dip, especially in the second month. First month was okay. Second month, a dip started in our capacity, functioning. We were a little bit down on energy. We were quite sure that Radhakrishnan is going to throw us out. See, somewhere we had our own notions on what the government machinery thinks. Generally, the general thumb rule is government, the bureaucracy, especially lower bureaucracy, doesn't like competition from NGOs, or what may be seen as competition from NGOs. They seem to have so much freedom. We are going to complete run of the place there, very free. So it was, we were expecting a backlash. But then Radhakrishnan called and said, hey guys, don't ditch me. All these other 14 IAS people have all left. How am I going to manage? So you better hang around. Then only we realized. So we actually were expecting the backlash, and the NCRC concept was also saying that the NGO Coordination Center will not be able to survive long. We're going to throw out. So we become a resource center. We position as ourselves as a resource center. We develop skills and bring a talent for providing support to all the NGOs doing work on the different areas, and put together a big grand plan, big structure, so many people for this thing, somebody good in housing, somebody good in this, sector anchors, half a dozen sectors, a big organogram was developed, and we said we are going to be a resource center. So it was a Nagapattinam Resource Center, NRC. That is how we announced ourselves also. There was a meeting in the first month itself, and we made a public announcement. Then Radhakrishnan said, no, you can't leave the place, you better, instead of the Shamiana, I will give you a good room in the collectorate itself. So he upgraded us that way. Then we decided, okay, what to do? Okay, so then somebody in the team came up with this saying that, okay, let's coordinate, NGO Coordination and Resource Center. So it became NCRC. So we were waiting to be thrown out, and then we got well integrated and then became part of the government system. Once you have a good room and a position next to the collector in his, near his office, in Tamil Nadu particularly, that's a very powerful positioning. A lot of our power also came from the communities and outsiders, all images finally, also optics you can say. Many meetings we have held with Radhakrishnan and I sitting on the dais and having fishermen and all meeting. So you go to the village next day, he thinks that this fellow is the collector's right hand man. So it is all, so used to say, basically we used to say that we were surveying on the place of a double bluff. So the administrator thinks that we have a lot of good contacts with people listen to what we say, so they want us. And the people think that we have a lot of influence with the administration, so they want to be close to us. So it's a kind of each feeding on the other, and then it becomes a strong positioning. So our relationship with the fishing community, especially the fishermen, this is a male-dominated world in some way. So the Nagapattinam village organization of the fishermen is one of the strongest in the country. It's weakened now post-tsunami a little bit, but basically each village has its own traditional panchayat, and it is a all-male organization. And they decide everything about that village. So an NGO going and trying to build houses there cannot bypass them. Government may say, collector might have said you are working there. They still have to deal with these guys, have a deal with them, otherwise they can't work. So they were quite strong. So they appreciate or they respect strength. It's not just these are good people, nice people, that is only okay up to a point. You must have been seen to be people who have influence and power, who have got resources. Then those guys play a different tune. In fact, we were the first to organize, in fact we in Jan 7th, the first fishermen meeting, all village meeting we had organized in the collectorate. And we convened through Sneha, and our SIFs people went to all the villages, invited their panchayat. By then things had settled down. They were still in the camp. They are yet to reach the villages, or the thing had not started. Temporary housing was just about to start. So we got them and convened, and I went and talked to the collector. He gave his conference hall to me. You run NGO coordination. So we myself and Jesu, we moderated that meeting and we ran that meeting. The collector came briefly and also went. So the first meeting of the community we convened. So that is another, straight away we were the first to get their attention, get to talk, and they gave all their issues, grievances, which we were able to immediately provide to the government. And that was also the unique situation of a highly responsive government. See, this is a very important part of the equation. A highly responsive government, which in other disasters might not have been the same. Cyclones, you won't expect them to be responsive. They know what to do. They don't need to be told. Here, everything was new to them, and they recognized that. And they were ready, open for discussion, and it was a very nice relationship, amazingly good relationship in the first 2 weeks when these 15 IAS officers were there. One of the IAS officers, fisheries person was there. He calls me and says, I've heard of SIFs, but what is SIFs? So like that, it was all good fun, very good friendships that time. Very good. So that's how the communication strategy was basically, it is not that much technology, but it is a question of building a link across the coast, because we had relationships, SIFs with the many of the men's groups, Sneha with all the women's groups around the coast. In fact, for the relief, the women were the major source to provide information. And then we straight away established a good diplomatic relationship with this panchayat system. It's a self-governance system, so it's a powerful system. So all these were put in place, and because we were having all these contacts, it strengthens our dealing with the NGOs. So the NGOs also say these guys know what they are doing, these guys can advise us, these guys have the information. So the NGOs also were happy to come to us. It's not that there were no tensions and problems, but yes, it went through different phases. The early phase we were seen as an absolutely essential for the relief phase. It was a nerve center, it is what everybody is happening, they have to be here. Over time, it would be a little bit areas where our coordination work had a certain greater influence, we had more participation. Areas where we found that we have very little say, people who do what they wanted. But right throughout, the mechanism of the regular meetings with the district collector, the frequency would reduce from daily meetings to weekly and fortnightly, but weekly normally. That would never change, and that was very crucial. The coordination works only if the government also has invested in the coordination, and they are using that coordination to achieve what they want. They will have a lot of things that they do on their own. In fact, the government is another agency which is difficult to coordinate. A lot of their sector planning, etc., was completely in isolation, taking place in Chennai in a black box, and they would come. But in our meetings, we will argue against it, we will fight with the collector over that, and sometimes he would take it up and try to get it changed. So he also became a link in our advocacy with the state government, which was making all the policies. See, the coordinating role became, had a certain relevance for the first 3 years. Till the housing came up, there was a need for a certain amount of coordination. The government also felt it, we also felt it. Beyond that, it was not possible to retain the structure, keep people, raise funds, so it became a inevitable close. So we lasted for 3 years, which is quite a relatively a long period. And Annie and all agreed to stay back, or they decided to stay back to follow up some of the work, development work which was started. So the disaster and related work took a back seat and development work took on. The idea was that, in fact, the name of Bedrock itself suggested that it is about continuing the disaster preparedness, resilience. It's about resilience, building resilience. Because development work is part of the resilience. But that link to disaster management over time faded away. It was seen as the rationale for the work, even continuing post-tsunami through post-coordination through Bedrock, but I think somewhere it slowly faded away. So I can't say that any of it is now, strictly speaking, logically linked to. You can always rationalize it, that's a different story. You can rationalize any good work, because what we found finally in disaster is, you are only as good as your pre-disaster governance. You are only as good as your pre-disaster schemes. You can't suddenly change everything. So strengthening the local community work, livelihoods, everything is good, all for the good only. But to say that it is all part of a real disaster preparedness and work like that, I am a bit skeptical. So I would say it faded away after the 3 years. The disaster link became this thing. The state Maidan had withdrawn into its own systems, national level, the NDMA, state disaster management. They picked up the ball and they were moving it in their own way. So this was a unique system of the first year with some continuity for 2 more years in terms of NGOs and government, district administration at least, working almost in a horizontal relationship, not a non-hierarchical relationship. This was very unique. Even today, it may not be easy to recreate in Tamil Nadu itself. And it happened only because they realized, or they felt, that we have certain strengths, we have certain knowledge, we have certain linkages that they did not have. and they respected it for us. And we had ground strength, community contacts. We were doing, in fact, SIFs, the image of NCRC with the district administration was strong because SIF's rehabilitation work in some of the fields we did was also very high profile. It was very impressive because we were the first to repair boats. We had the team. So we straight away jumped, started repairing boats. We produced the largest number of boats that were finally supplied by a whole range of agencies. We were supplier for the boats. And our housing colony in Tarangambadi was considered the best in the tsunami, and for much after tsunami, from Chennai they used to take people to Tarangambadi to show the housing, because this was the only one done in a participatory manner. Our idea that it should be done in participatory manner comes because of Shushma's input very early on. And the Tamil Nadu government went in a completely different direction. It did not take on board the Gujarat experience. They said, oh, that's different. Tamil Nadu, we know our fishermen, we know our system, we will do it ourselves, we will do it in our own way. So they were not open for that kind of a process. But within that system, still working within the guidelines given by the government, because of our special relationship with the community. This is very important, no? It's not the coordination work, all that probably increased our profile with the community, that might have played a role, but we had this strong link with our community, and we were in a position to give them tough messages. All others were kind of, NGOs were often unclear how to deal with these guys. On the other hand, we were able to tell them what is right and wrong. We had dialogues with them, and this is a very large village, 1,000 household village, 13, 14 members of Panchayat. But we used to have regular formal meetings with them. So it's not I can't tell you the full story, but it's the housing is a very interesting story, because we got the community to even redistribute land, existing village. See, the government took people out of the 0 to 200 meters compulsorily. They all got houses. In Tarangambadi, it was about 700 meters away. But those who are in the village, 200 to 500, old village, had an option of moving out if they want, or if they want, they can get in situ houses. So those people mostly opted for in situ. But some family was living with 1 cent of land. Others had bigger. But the new colony, everybody had 3 cents of land. That was the government guideline. And this old thing had winding lanes, no proper infrastructure. So we told these guys, this is an opportunity to improve a village. And they sat and they discussed, and a few people therefore gave up their land and moved to the new colony coming up. And land pooling took place, and we redistributed the people in the village, put proper roads, width of road was standardized, and everybody got 3 cents of land. So land redistribution took place in that village.
But there were issues with housing, I think, no?
Housing, lot of issues. Housing was very difficult to him because the government policies were substantially at fault. They had got certain things right by ensuring that it's the state that has a overall control over housing was the correct decision. But the technical guidelines were fairly arbitrarily developed without any reference to cost and local conditions. It is just somebody sitting in this thing and saying this is strong, that is strong. Completely RCC oriented, very different. Many of the other ideas that they gave, they were completely unwilling to listen to us. Then and worse was, they did not put in place a system to supervise. We worked long with the district collector before finally through the NCRC we had a technical experts team periodically visiting and give things. By then a lot of the damage was done. It was too difficult to correct the poor quality of construction. See, overall if you see across all the villages in Nagapattinam now, there is a huge difference in the quality of life. The villages are now much better laid in terms of arrangements, much better infrastructure, and and much more solid. So it may not be that easy. However, there are the villages where the construction work and all were not done well. The extent to which the vulnerability has been reduced is a question mark. But overall, we can certainly say that the community became better equipped. And more importantly, see what happened, what changed in the tsunami. Let's forget our design, the technical side of the disaster management, the infrastructure technical side. This whole process brought the community in touch with the mainstream, and there is a mainstream of the community that has taken place. It was a largely inward looking community and a seaward looking community, not a landward looking community. This changed everything. Suddenly they are much more self-confident, they can take on the outside world, they have negotiated with NGOs, they have negotiated with government agencies, they have managed programs themselves. So enormous strength they have got, confidence they have got. So their aspirations have gone up. So I think that is the real change. It is the change in the psychology of the fishermen. It has got its negative side also. I won't say everything is a rosy thing. It's got pros and cons, but certainly a tremendous boost to their confidence and their ability therefore to negotiate. Their ability to deal with the outside world has been substantially increased, and that is the capacity that is very crucial. Basically, the emergency situation, it becomes like a wartime situation. So we are talking of generals almost. You have quick decisions, fast this thing. So leadership was very crucial. The different systems, you have the community, you had the NGO world, then you had the government. All three you can see that they responded by bringing in people with good leadership capacity to run the show. The tsunami districts of Tamil Nadu, if you look at it, and not just Tamil Nadu, Kerala, across the board you look, the district administration, only 2 collectors who are holding position at that time covered themselves with glory. All the other collectors were found wanting. One was Bedi in Gagandeep Singh Bedi in Kadlur. The other was Mr. Srinivasan in Koilan. These are the 2 IAS officers who proved brilliant in an emergency situation. Now, we had a very good collector in Nagapattinam at that time, very intellectual, very very nice person. He may be a very nice, may be an excellent collector in peacetime, but this is wartime. He was found wanting. So that is why somebody like Radhakrishnan, who responds better and can take care of that kind of situation, who accidentally was in the neighboring district, who was the first to bring his, the relief team to thing, was in the right place, right time, and they immediately picked him and made him the collector. The Kanyakumari collector on the spot at least got himself of an image of a person who is scared. So his first trip to the trip post tsunami, there was rumor of another tsunami, and his staff took him away, and he also quietly went away. So he literally ran away from the coast. That is the image he got, Then they brought another person who was a bit of a strong man, who could negotiate with the church. Because the Kanyakumari, the church is very dominant. So they then want to do everything their way. So then the government had to tame them. So they need a collector of that type. So they picked a person. So what we found was somebody in Chennai, there was a brains trust, who were picking and choosing. And if you see the people who are posted on who are put in important positions to deal with the coast, they all had previous coastal experience as collectors or somewhere, or fisheries directors. So connections with the coast they picked up, good track record. So they sent their A team to all these places. They handpicked, and very quickly made the change. So after the immediate relief, fishermen the main active. Livelihoods of fishermen was very crucial. So a lot of funds, World Bank programs, a lot of work is to be done to get hold of funds and to put projects in place. So one of the 15 IAS officers in Nagapattinam who had done very well in the relief was immediately picked up and put as director of FSI. So there was an excellent system of picking up the right person and posting. So we believe it was the Chief Secretary and Finance Secretary at that time in Tamil Nadu who did these brilliant postings. That was the most important thing from the government side. Here, of course, the best leaders in disaster management, India, of course, you may have interstate commodity movement problem, but for NGOs we have no problem. So the talent from previous disasters flew in. But for some reason, we did not get the Orissa cyclone expertise, which was much more relevant from a livelihood point of view than the Gujarat earthquake. We never get for some reason. Though some people had worked there. It is very clear that the Gujarat earthquake has produced a lot more of learnings and intellectual this thing which had gone deep and which is available in donor organization, which is available in NGOs, and that flew to us, that flowed to us. The Orissa thing I came to know much later. This problem of too many boats, too many things, all were already experienced in Gujarat. But it was not well recommended, documented. It was largely still not very sure why. Though Orissa made its name in terms of a few things like they put up this very famous shelters, cyclone shelters, multi-purpose cyclone shelters. So some things their innovation flew in. The housing, some of the recommendations that came through the UNDP and the technical committee for the housing, some of those things have probably had some connection with the Orissa. But the NGOs and our own work, NCRC work, was not much influenced by the very valuable lessons of Orissa. So it's also clear that not all disasters have produced results which flow to the next disaster. So, so the NGOs, the system is in a disaster, the donors also look for talent. Okay, the local, there is nobody here, but somebody with a disaster experience is there somewhere. Their own team as well as the NGOs. So they support them to come and get involved. So good talent certainly comes in, and naturally the leadership pool is much bigger. Local community was already most important. It showed for the first time to the outside world, except for a few of us who are working all the time with the fishermen. For the outside world, for the first time, we have always heard about tribes having their own self-governance, which is formalized through the Panchayat Raj Act, giving them Gram Sabha powers, things like that. Something similar and possibly even better exists on the coast. They have their own strong local organization, which obviously there is a formal leadership there. And they had their own democratic system where many of the panchayats, see, the problem was when the tsunami took place, their panchayat roles were largely inward looking. Dealing with the outside world was limited. There's always one or two educated people in the village who had more articulation. They will be taken to meet the collector. They may be in the panchayat, they may not be in the panchayat that time. They will help, they will mediate. But this required intensive dealing with the outside world. So in the very first month, most panchayats changed the set of their committee members, brought in completely new set of people who had links with the outside world and who were in a better position to deal with them. But somewhere within the year, many of them, there is a backlash. Many of these people who had this capacity seem to be misusing that capacity to enrich themselves. They were all once again removed en masse. So at least I know many of the villages, 3 changes in panchayat took place during a year. So there is an institutional arrangement in this traditional fishing community to lead it and coordinate its work is an important thing. So that is an important institutional thing. So the government had its thing and it got its act going. NGO, the national level talent pool was leveraged. It came because it's a beginner's disaster, voluntarily people came, some people stayed on. And then the community had its own strong internal organization. All things came together. In fact, hindsight I feel a lot better. That time we were very angry. We were feeling that so many things are not happening properly. So many things are being done wrong and we were helpless. So actually our feeling that it has been a success and general acceptance that this was a successful initiative or venture comes from some of our successes which were brilliant. But there were many things which went wrong which never could take place properly. So if you really need a balanced picture, there are a lot of things that didn't happen. Now, first, policies. There were Tamil Nadu government, I realized, this is my judgment, working in the tsunami and in a normal time also. It is a system which is good at implementation. The top, there is a will, yes, this has to be done, then it will get done. It goes down the line, it's very quick. Because I've been one foot in Kerala, one foot in Tamil Nadu. Kerala is the exact opposite. It is very weak in implementation. Tamil Nadu is poor in policy making. Kerala is better in policy making, but poor in implementation. These are some characteristics, inherent strengths and weaknesses of the government. So Tamil Nadu, the larger debates and things that are required before you make a holistic policy are often absent. It takes place in an administrative system, the political administrative, and something comes out often without too much explanation. Then it gets the saving grace in Tamil Nadu and how we survived what may have been quite a lot of bad policies actually was because there is this extraordinary importance to the role of the collector in Tamil Nadu and in many states. In fact, I am told that it is historically it is strong in the presidency areas because the collector was the king. So that still continues in some ways, the importance of the collector. So in Tamil Nadu, the government will come up with a very interesting policy with very restrictive, very strong. It looks as if if you don't do that, you are in trouble. You may get who knows, they may even jail you. That sort of a language. Then there will be a small clause saying according to local conditions, collector can make suitable modifications. This is more for not really to change policy. It is more to make it implementable. But reality was within a certain limit, you could rewrite the policy and do it the way it is appropriate here. The 200-meter line was sacrosanct. So much of fight and this thing and everything took place over that issue. Kanyakumari, 50 meters we put up houses. Nobody asked questions, but the collector has okayed it. There is no space anyway. So, so finally you find that the decentralization, de facto decentralization in Tamil Nadu, forget whatever is being said on paper, whatever the GO says, the de facto decentralization in Tamil Nadu helped. Kerala, there is so much of political interference in the implementation right to the bottom, lowest level of implementation. Here district collector convenes, in fact, after 5 months, the local politicians woke up and say, NGOs are doing everything, government is not consulting us, what is our role? So finally the Radhakrishnan convened a meeting of all the panchayats, MLAs and MPs from that area and held one big meeting. And very interestingly, NCRC, Sneha and SIFs were also invited. So we also went and sat there. And the politicians are saying, sir, please tell Amma, this is Jayalalitha period, that this is to be done, that has to be done. So in Kerala, the politician will go straight to the equivalent of the Amma there and tell what is to be done, and the district collector has to be blindly follow what is coming from above. Here, these people are requesting this thing, collector, and even begging him to say certain things to Amma and so on. So that is the relationship. So the district collector and the wide range of powers that he normally enjoys, de facto, and the tsunami time, a fair amount. Tsunami, of course, policies were all regularly in touch with collector. You can say once they come to Chennai, they are junior most officers. They are zeros here. But once they go back home, it's a very different story. So good leaders, given the flexibility to operate with a certain level of accountability, because everything gets politicized, media is there. So we had it is not that they were completely, just handed over and these people abdicated responsibility. It was not like that. But so I think what we really learned is that delegation without abdication. Everybody is strong. The government is strong in its own sphere of policy making. The district collector is very strong in his sphere of implementation. That sort of a very interesting situation developed along the coast. It was a coordination where government mandate was there, but it was a coordination that emerged through a coalition of the forces that are there on the ground. It was not something that, you know, somebody just says, okay, you be the coordinator and you run the show. So there was a tendency to subordinate the coordination system to the government and treat it as a small appendage of the government. We were never that. That was the importance of the NCRC. Yeah, it's the quality of the people who came together, and there I think the availability of SIFs as a platform. So in fact, that is one thing, you know, we decided that we are not just an organization in this thing, we are a platform. So we provided, became the host for a lot of talent to enter. We became the thing. Sneha had its own channels, but it is a relatively limited and more the activist channel. They went around having public hearings and things like that, taking up. Rights things were important to a certain level, only on these issues, not on all issues. Because there was enough resources, so it is not to fight for resources. If we find that somebody somewhere is claims to be left out, there was enough resources to provide them, take it at face value and provide the support. So that is also made it unique. There were enough, there has been no disaster where funds were been surplus.